Imagine if at the end of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, when Harry encounters Voldemort, Voldemort looks at the camera and says, "Oi, magic's some weak shit though, check this piece," and then pulls out a gun and shoots Harry in the face. Credits immediately roll as Voldemort Fortnite dances off to the side and the series ends right then and there. Would that be funny? Yes. But well, there's a reason it wasn't written like that. You'd be sacrificing a couple things for the sake of a joke, namely the ability for audiences to feel immersed in the story, and also like the main character being alive and the story being able to continue and all that, obviously. Now, Turf Matriarch could have chosen to have that scene go down that way, but would the trade-off have been worth it? If your answer is yes, it's because you didn't take the series particularly seriously to begin with, and you're more in it for the memes than anything else. I'm not saying I blame you, I'd also be fine if that was the series of events that actually occurred. But for a writer making an attempt at a serious piece of fiction, there are certain sacrifices they simply cannot make. It's no longer Halloween, but I made this costume for my VTuber avatar, and I am going to use the excuse of talking about a spooky show to use it, because I'm proud of it. Liam Vickers is an animator I have been following ever since I saw his Cliffside video years ago. Cliffside was a fun little concept for a weird horror-themed western that didn't take itself very seriously. Most of the drama in it was used as a build-up to a punchline rather than for the purpose of making audience members feel any actual tension. The antagonist comes to town for the final climax, everything seems all spooky and serious, and then the protagonist just instantly defeats him by giving him a gold star and asking if he wants to be friendly now. You know, pretty silly stuff. Not very immersive, doesn't give you a strong sense of drama or anything like that, but still very fun to watch. It had a creepy cute spider lady with a lot of teeth. Side note, Liam Vickers seems to have a thing for creepy cute characters with scary teeth. I empathize. Fast forward 3 years, and Vickers, in collaboration with a whole-ass animation studio, releases a 26-minute pilot for a show with a much more serious plot, though while still retaining a lot of the goofiness. I enjoyed it a lot. I love the cute little robots. I love the dorky yet weirdly hot, really weirdly hot, mind you, tall murder boy. I have specific tastes. The animation is... like, I'm wondering if maybe my eye for 3D animation isn't refined enough to notice any of its faults, because I honestly struggle to find any. It just looks really great. I'm sure someone with a better eye could find some problems, but at the bare minimum, I think everyone could agree it does its job competently, and I'd personally even go so far as to say it does its job wonderfully. The set designs are good at storytelling, humor, and spectacle, the animations have a lot of personality to them, and they did a great job making these robots really expressive despite their unconventional anatomy and faces. I think this show has the potential to be really good. I also think, however, that in order for it to live up to that potential, some things could do to change. I wouldn't be making this video if I didn't have some criticism to share. It's really not a lot of criticism. It's only one particular element of it that I take strong issue with, really. Remember that goofy disregard for drama and tension that was present in Cliffside? Well, that's equally present in this. The problem, though, is that while Cliffside never really made any attempt to take itself seriously, Murder Drones does. It does this while continuously cracking jokes and breaking the fourth wall to such a degree you'd think a gun was being pointed at the writer's head with the promise to pull the trigger if they ever let the audience feel any emotion. I'm perfectly fine with jokes existing in serious plots, even really goofy ones. There's some really good ones in the pilot, like all the background details showing how much Uzi's doorsmith of a father very explicitly and unapologetically loves doors more than her. There's nothing wrong with that joke. It's incredibly over the top and maybe pushes the bounds of believability, but it doesn't go all the way in breaking the suspension of disbelief. These aren't even humans after all, they're robots who happen to act a lot like them. It makes total sense that the guy who was programmed to maintain doors would care more about them than anything else, even his own daughter. Then, however, you have these fourth wall-breaking jokes that seem to happen constantly without any logical reason behind them. If you haven't seen Murder Drones yet, I encourage you to watch it yourself before continuing this video, because I am now going to list off a bunch of scenes I have problems with, which is going to have the effect of making the show look much worse than it actually is. I'll link the pilot in the description, it's right here on YouTube. Anyway, someone tries to shoot the main character, but their heads-up display shows that she's wearing plot armor. A guy makes a big deal out of mentioning the existence of his loving wife and kids right when we know he's about to be killed. Another guy, running for his life right after that previously mentioned dude along with the rest of his co-workers are horribly murdered, goes up to the main character and says,
"Hey Uzi, I realize no one has said my name aloud so far, so I'm just letting you know I'm..."
The problem with these jokes is they remind you you're watching a fictional story, despite the fact that this fictional story also wants you to be immersed in it and take it seriously. Just not like too seriously, you know? I mean, oh god, you thought I was being serious when I made this story? Nah man, look, it's self-aware, it knows how dumb it is. That's the vibe these jokes give off. It's a lack of confidence more than anything. This is the sort of thing creators do when they're afraid of genuinely putting their heart and soul into something only for people to potentially criticize it. But Liam, if you're watching this for whatever reason, I'm here to tell you you don't need to do that. The series is good, you could have a really engaging plotline and character arcs, and the whole 9 yards if this becomes a full series, but if you keep turning to the camera and telling the audience it's okay not to take it too seriously every time something dramatic happens, you're going to actively prevent them from being able to take it seriously. You just can't have both worlds here. And in case I haven't made this clear, you can still have goofy jokes, even cheekily self-aware ones. Here, I'll give an example of one the show could even continue doing without breaking the immersion. The main character is constantly doing this thing where she brings attention to her own angst. She basically does the whole loading edginess.exe thing. Well, this could be interpreted as yet more defensive irony, you know, the show is being all, oh yeah, we have an angsty character, but we know angsty characters are cringe, so we're self-aware about it. I think it could actually be justified in universe without just being an unwarranted fourth wall break. See, because these are robots, Uzi apologetically pointing out her own edginess could actually make total sense. She could be intentionally trying to play the part of an angsty schoolgirl in order to sort of mold a personality onto an otherwise blank robotic slate. It's possible that this is already the writer's intent, since there's a scene where she says a bunch of angry stuff to a fellow kid, but then very self-awarely clarifies that she's not actually mad at him, she's just being hormonal. It's also possible to break the fourth wall in a story while still having your audience take it seriously, even for comedic purposes, just not like this. Doki Doki Literature Club does it, Undertale and Deltarune do it. Hell, Undertale even has fourth wall breaks that aren't necessarily explainable by its own internal logic, but those fourth wall breaks don't simultaneously undermine the tone of the scene like a lot of the jokes in Murder Drones do. You often have to really dedicate your story to it, fully acknowledge the fourth wall is broken, and work that into your narrative in a way that doesn't feel forced or unearned. Toby Fox is a master at this. It's not easy, and it's not something most media should really try to do, seeing as how it's the exception to the rule. But every time you break the fourth wall in a story that isn't explicitly about breaking the fourth wall, you are actively damaging the viewer's immersion in exchange for whatever it is you're doing. Sometimes it can be worth it. A certain piece of media also involving robots comes to mind, in which there's an incredibly optional side quest you can do that can eventually lead to you fighting the literal CEO of the game's publisher. Now, while that is funny, it probably wouldn't be worth the fourth wall break if it was one of the main story bosses every player had to go through. You'd get to it and be like, what? I thought this was a serious game. Why is it showing a real-life CEO as a... what? But because it's so far out of the way of the game's main story, it manages to get away with it. It feels completely separate to the rest of the game, pretty much non-canon. But when your series' first action scene, which plays a crucial role in the plot, shows the enemy combatant detecting that the main character has plot armor, it's not exactly easy to ignore, and I really don't think the admittedly C-tier joke is worth the damage to the immersion. So yeah, I think that's about all I have to say on the pilot. Again, I really liked it. I just want to be able to feel immersed in it without it constantly reminding me that I'm watching nothing more than a bunch of fake pixels on my screen. I love N. I want to hug him and stick my hand in his mouth, and I would probably buy his merch if I was the type of person to buy merch. You go buy it instead. Support the show. And hey, kids, don't be afraid to let your work take itself seriously. Cringe culture is dead. If someone calls it edgy or whatever, who cares? Just make it what you want. It's possible that Liam Vickers actually has full confidence in his work, and that I've been armchair psychologizing him too hard. Maybe he just really likes these kinds of jokes, but my criticism towards him still stands. You can have a story with both serious and silly scenes, but you cannot have a serious story that doesn't take itself seriously.